It's a bold claim to say that Link's cursed arm could be treated in some way with Plums rather than with the Master Sword. And I think after hearing me out, I have at least convinced some of you of what I've learned. A lot of Zelda lore, and more specifically the Sheikah's culture, is inspired by Shinto and Buddhist beliefs. Zelda praying at the sacred springs comes from the Shinto practice of Misogi, a ritual of purifying the body of pollution. And the sacred force and spiritual energy likely are inspired by Shinto belief in kami, which loosely translates into spirits or deities and a sort of animistic force which exists in all living things. That's why the stone frogs and plum trees in Kakariko village are called deities. Most importantly, though, is the belief in Oni, which is a creature resembling a demon and an ogre with roots in Shintoism, and bokoblins and moblins are basically Oni. To quote Michael Foster's book, The Book of Yokai, they are red, blue, black, yellow, with clawed hands and sharp protruding fangs. They have horns, carry an iron staff or club, and wear a loincloth, so it looks exactly like them. The Japanese had to protect themselves from these things, such as Oni and curses, and one of the ways they did this was with the use of plum trees. Plum trees were planted near doors and entrances to keep spirits away, but they could also be planted in the northeast or southwest directions, because they were known as the cursed directions. That meant they had to avoid traveling in those directions sometimes, or else they'd risk punishment from the spirits. So if you look at the layout of Kakariko village, you'll see that all the plum trees are planted right next to the door entrances. Mellie's plum tree garden is planted to the southwest of her home, possibly to protect herself or her home from curses. And she has a lot of dialogue detailing her spiritual bond to the plum trees, and she knows that when they wither away, she will die too. So given what we know about Japanese culture, in the context of the story, it could mean that the plum trees are protecting Mellie from malice, monsters, or Calamity Ganon, and that's why she's so protective of them. It seems too intentional to be coincidental. The Japanese believe plums symbolize perseverance and purity because they are the first flowers to cut through the snow in winter, which is exactly how Mellie describes them. And in Age of Calamity, you can visit Kakariko village 100 years in the past to find that her plum tree garden doesn't exist yet, which is canonically correct because they were only planted when she was born. So to me, it seems like the developers have been very mindful with the plums in regards to the story, with their placement and the representation. If the game takes inspiration from Japanese culture to use plums to ward curses from your spirit, there is a good possibility that in some shape or form, Link may need to use plums to save his arm from the malice that consumed him in the sequel.